Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this optional Zoom workshop about our newest grant opportunity. My name is Thomas Kittredge. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Belfast. And I want to thank the other city staff that are on board this meeting, John Boynton, the city planner, who is the host for this meeting, Steve Wilson, our code enforcement officer, and then our partner, Zach Schmesser from Our Town Belfast. Oh, we got one. That might be Tina. So tonight we're here to talk about the City of Belfast. Sorry, let me start over again. The City of Belfast is trying to secure grant funding through the Community Development Block Grant, which is also called CDBG, Community Enterprise Program. The CDBG program is money that starts as federal tax dollars donated or allocated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then administered at the state level, in this case by the Main Office of Community Development. And they have program requirements for this CDBG program, as well as several other CDBG programs that have to meet various federal requirements that are conditions of receiving those grants. So this particular program, the Community Enterprise Program, the city was fortunate to secure one of these grants just last year for $100,000, which can be used to provide subgrants as business facade grants. That program is intended to improve facades or exteriors only of buildings that have businesses operating out of them, or can even be ones that are vacant, but if they were improved, would be more likely to have a tenant. That's really the ultimate aim of that, though related to that and a federal requirement of the program is the elimination of blight. That is a federal requirement, and the way a building could potentially qualify for such a grant is to be determined to have be blighted on a spot basis. We call it spot blight, and that's something we'll get into a little bit further. That's something Steve is particularly involved with in this process. So at this point, the city is putting together its application to the state, which is due April 9th. And we will be more successful in securing this grant and be more competitive and hopefully secure this grant if we are better able to demonstrate interest and need for this particular type of resource. And that's why we have particularly reached out to interested building owners or businesses that operate in buildings to supply us with what we're calling an application that you may have seen already. We have on our website. I believe we've sent it directly to a number of you. And that really, the application helps the city demonstrate that need by showing them we have projects that have costs associated with those that have also received a spot blight determination. So in the eyes of the state, we show that we are very clear that we have a high expectation that we can actually deploy those grant funds if we are fortunate to receive them, as opposed to saying, well, please give us this grant. We think we can find some people that will make use of it. We think this is a better approach. We can't guarantee that if we get the grant that we can provide a subgrant to anyone that submits an application. However, if it goes along the lines of our current grant that we received last year that we're currently implementing, we do have an advisory committee that reviews all the applications, and the projects they did select for funding from our previous grant were only ones from those applications that were submitted at around this time last year. We did not, for example, have a new round of applications after we got the grant. Unfortunately, we had a lot of worthy projects and a lot of need, and ultimately we were only able to fund about half of the projects, about 5 out of the 10 that were eligible at the time the committee made their decision. And Daniel Nichols, who's on the call tonight, is one of our consultants that is implementing those projects now. So the application that we provided, we want to ask you about your project. where it's located, the nature of it, the type of activities, whatever costs you can associate with that, and also really how your current conditions affect your building or business, and how some improvements could benefit your building and business. And these are types of responses that will be helpful to us in crafting our application to the state, which is due on April 9th. The reason Zach has been involved in trying to make particularly downtown building owners aware of this opportunity. John Boynton is involved in the current grant and would be involved in the future grant, because a lot of these projects would be subject to in-town design review, and he'll be talking more about that. And Steve Wilson, our code enforcement officer, is involved not only in permitting the projects, but also with the spot blight determination, which is a threshold requirement of an eligible project. So with that said, I guess I'd like to turn it over to Zach. Zach maybe can talk about this program and what it means and why we're pursuing this.
Thank you. Well, as Thomas said, the city was successful in applying for and receiving this grant last year. There was need that's been identified over the last 3 years that I've been in Belfast for building owners, particularly in the downtown, to make improvements to their facades that maybe are cost prohibitive or just need additional support. There are areas that have been identified as being blighted, and we really feel strongly that these sorts of improvements to the downtown add to the vibrancy of the downtown, which is, of course, our mission. I was happy to be involved as part of the selection committee, and as Thomas said, we had a really difficult decision to make. There was twice as many projects that were submitted as there were funds available. So, I've encouraged Thomas and the city to apply again this year based on the need, and there's been really good interest again. The demand didn't go away from this funding. If anything, I think people have seen how the funding can be used, and we're really excited to have Dan on board to help property owners really start to get underway on these projects, and we'll really, I think, start to see the impact. We also believe strongly, I think, that as individual property owners start to make these improvements to their properties, there's that peer pressure effect, and then building owners kind of look at their building and say, well, if the building next to me can make these improvements, we can make our improvements too. And again, it just makes for a more vibrant downtown for everyone, and helps everybody out, which is our goal. So we're thrilled to be involved in the process and help, as Thomas said, do some of the outreach and get the message out to property owners who might be interested in the program. And I'm afraid that, even if the city does get this funding again, that it won't be enough to really meet the need, and we'll be able to continue to pursue, whether it be through this program or other avenues to support property owners in making these kind of investments in their property and to the downtown. So happy to be involved, and I think Thomas dropped off and is coming back on right now. Thomas, can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you. I'm sorry. My computer just crashed there for a second. So I hope you said some good things while I was gone for about a minute there.
Yeah, just don't watch the recording.
Huh?
Don't watch the recording.
Do I look funny? Zach, did you want to turn over to, I guess John and Steve are the other two that need to be speaking about this. So, John, can you weigh in on really with the project implementation, how it works with in-town design review?
Absolutely, Thomas. But before I give my spiel on In Town, I want to hear from some in the audience on what they understand. I talk in generalities with In Town, and I want to know how you understand the program. You can start, Diane.
Okay, I think I understand the program. It is a community block grant. The grant is a maximum of 25,000. We are, as the owner, are expected to pay at least 28%. And so for my project, I would be looking at, say, a $32,000 project, and I would pay 7,000, and you would pay 25,000. I have an application that I understand that the code blight itemization has to go to you and you have to sign off on it. And then there is another application that's due by April 5th, hard copy or electronic. You would love to have pictures and swatches and whatever all it would, buoy it up to look better. But that's pretty much what I understand. I'm pretty on the top layer of simplicity understanding, but that's what I understand. And I understand that there's a list of contractor rates that have to be abided by because it's a federally funded or state funded organization, so you can't underpay anybody. I think that's about all I understand.
Perfect, thank you. Dale, if you could just explain, I clearly didn't explain myself well enough. Diane gave us the entire program. I'm specifically looking for what you understand for what's required with In Town.
I am working with Diane, the Home Supply Center, as a consultant, unofficially, I guess. And I am contacting contractors and subcontractors with the scope of work that Diane and I have developed. One procedural question I have on the application: as an engineer, I like Excel spreadsheets and I don't like dealing in numbers in Word documents. So I have changed your item 3, project finances, to an Excel spreadsheet. Does that bother any of you folks?
No, that's perfectly fine. I think as long as, as we receive applications, I review them to see if there's any missing information. And while we don't actually submit your full application to the state as part of our application, we provide a budget table. We typically we have to provide a budget table that kind of lists the projects in terms of the match and the project cost, but not on an itemized basis by different activities. We'll probably discuss it in the narrative in terms of what projects want to do specifically. But no, that's okay. If a spreadsheet is easier for you and it provides the same information, that's perfectly fine. We can manage.
It would take a real discerning eye to differentiate my sheet from the one that you submitted in the application form. Yep. So. Diane, did you have a question, get an answer concerning 75 and 77?
I did talk with Thomas about, everybody understands that we own 2 properties on Main Street. 75 is Home Supply and 77 is the Whitehead building. And it's our upper store. And both stores have facade issues. Mostly the gutters are the really safety issue. And they are not continuous, the gutters. So does that mean it would be 2 projects or 1 project? And how does that play out? I can't imagine that you would give me 2 grants, 2 projects. So then I really would like to do all the gutters. 2 buildings.
Well,
has anybody seen the ice flow that comes off my building? It falls on cars, it falls on people. It's dangerous. It needs to be fixed.
I'll try to take a stab. The $25,000 maximum grant is I believe is a state requirement. It's in the program statement. And without, that just says basically maximum amount of community enterprise grant / loan assistance to businesses, 25,000. So I guess it may require a follow-up with them if that was the case, that we were going to provide 2 grants, for one for each of one grant for one property, one grant for another, that are owned by the same people. I guess I need to find that out.
Okay.
We did have someone in the last round submit the same owners for 2 different properties. Ultimately, they finished one of their projects, so they were taken out of consideration. And it's possible that if we expect a lot of demand, it's possible that the advisory committee may choose to distribute the funds and not give 2 grants to the same person. So, but it really should be what do you think is a meaningful, discrete project for a particular. If it makes more sense and you're going to treat both facades as one project, then by all means you can do that. But if it makes more sense as 2 different projects, then you can do that as well. At this stage in the game, I think we'd probably.
At this point, you don't know. It could be either or.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it like that, it sounds like if it's the same owner for both, probably the state would not allow it.
That makes sense to me.
Those a lot. I mean, but someone could have basically two applications in the pool if they have 2 different properties applying for it. But to this point, we haven't awarded 2 grants to the same person. We haven't really, I guess we haven't been in that situation as of yet to make that decision. So knowing, you should just kind of, I guess, base it on what you think your project costs are. And if it makes more sense, again, to have them as the 2 facades together, 2 properties together, then by all means do that. But if they make more sense as separate, then you can do that at this stage in the game.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, so for in-town design review, there are 2 types of permits that the city requires. Any nonprofit or business owner in the in-town area receive. A type 1 permit is a mandatory review, mandatory compliance. And that is the majority of the reviews that we do. So we're looking at changes to exteriors of buildings, whether that's an addition, demolition, like the removal of deck or balcony, apparatuses, like if there's some molding, those are all specific items that the in-town design review would review. For a type 3, that is a mandatory review, but not mandatory compliance. So those are minor changes to structures like awnings. If you're replacing windows without changing the size of the opening, whether that's smaller or larger. Stoops, if I'm remembering correctly, door replacement like windows, stoops and steps. And those are the few things specifically for a type 3 review. What I'm looking to see in an application is a depiction of what the changes are going to look like. If you could provide a photo that shows what's currently, how the facade currently looks with a drawing. I'm not going to require details of like an elevation drawing. For some of the improvements that might be asking too much. But you need to provide enough information for the committee to feel comfortable making a decision. In some instances, that might be a simple drawing with a swatch for new siding, or a brochure showing what the new windows are going to look like. Anything like that is helpful.
That was my question. Would a brochure of the windows, because we have no intention of, should we be selected, we have no intention of changing the size of either the doors or windows, but upgrading them from the current plate glass old old glass to more current window, it would be more energy efficient and safer. If somebody should jump the curb again and hit the building, it's pretty dangerous, those old windows. So, but we wouldn't be changing the basic look. They would be new. So if I had brochures from the company, that would be adequate. Yes.
Diane, that should be adequate, just as long as you are not proposing any other changes besides just a replacement of,
Right.
Basically, everything proposed is like kind. If it's a 40 by 66 double hung with no grill, that's what would be replaced. If the door is a 2-panel with 2/3 glass, the door would be replaced as close as possible with what's currently available out there to what's there now. That's the intent as right now, and so it's basically a simple replacement of years old items to something new and more energy efficient. So when would that design review happen? After the grant or before the application is submitted?
Dale, that's a call on the applicant. A finding from the in-town design review or a permit that's received, there isn't a time limit on it. So if you want to submit information and in a couple weeks have a review, we can schedule that. My hesitation stems from the timing of the grant from a dollar and cent standpoint. Thomas can speak to this piece more in depthly, but I just don't want to see an applicant doing improvements before when the program, the facade grant states that can happen.
Yeah, I can, let me jump in there. Yeah, so the city's application is due April 9th. We'd expect to find out if we were selected by the state sometime in June. The money would not be available really technically until at least July. And the committee would likely need to meet to review the applications and make their final selections, which usually get formally blessed by the city council after they've chosen them. And then a project can get underway. Federal grants will not reimburse you for things that have happened prior to something tomorrow. That's great, but we couldn't give you any credit either on your match or reimburse you for your actual expenses. So unfortunately, people that need to do something immediately or tomorrow, this is not a good fit because of the various steps involved. We anticipate that we could get projects underway if we get funded sometime this fall. That would be our hope. That would be our expectation. We got started a lot late because I was busy with other things. With our current grant, we're just getting underway with those in March of the following year. We don't want to wait that long, so I think the goal would be to get them underway in the fall of 2021. Yeah, so we don't want people to go through extra steps. If you doing your project will only happen if you receive a grant. And then I would probably advise you not to waste your time kind of doing the in-town design review until you had been selected. It wouldn't be a good use of your time. If there's the possibility, you may still do the project, even if you're not selected for a grant down the road, then maybe you do want to consider getting that out of the way, but that's really up to you. But we don't want to make people do extra steps before they've been selected for a project.
I do want to mention this because it's fairly new. The city council in June or July of last year approved a permit fee associated with in-town design review. A type 1 permit is $100 and a type 3 permit for a review is $50. Just something to think about. The purpose of that is staff time, and we don't want every minor change needing to come back before the committee versus having everything ready to go at once so that we don't do rolling reviews.
Okay. Thank you, John. I want to turn over to Steve for a little bit. So in the application, there is a section, I believe it's numbered as, what number did I have in mind? 4.1, designation of spotlight for any facade to be improved. And again, this is not a city requirement. This is a federal requirement attached with the funding. And we really want to tell the state in our application that we have projects that have already received, have met that threshold of spotlight. There's a one-page form that is part of the application packet. And this determination review needs to be requested from Steve directly, though I have forwarded requests onto him already, I believe from Diane and also Tina. But for other people that may be listening, so this is an important part of the process, and Steve can talk about what that actually entails. And what are you looking for? What constitutes spotlight, according to Steve? Because it's really his decision on whether or not a property gets this determination.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a mute problem. That never happens, by the way, for code officers. Anyhow, what I am looking for is any sign of physical water damage. I mean, it's a fairly easy thing to hit. If you've got, windows that are rotted, that are failing, the paint is falling off them, the sashes are falling out of them, of course, that's easy there. If you've got steps that are uneven, that need to have repairs, it's a fairly easy thing to hit. It's something that basically needs some maintenance and wouldn't pass muster, that if it doesn't get taken care of sometime in the fairly short future could cause additional damage to the building. And the last thing we don't want you to do is, worry that I'm going to come in and, say your building is terrible, but at the same point in time, we want to be of assistance to make sure that if there's funding available for you to help maintain your large downtown business, that you're able to get it. So, and I'm looking at right now, I have got a list going here of at least 8 different properties I'm going to be looking at in the next few days, and I'm sure we'll be getting more. And if there's anything specific that you're concerned with or want to make sure I see, by all means, call it out on the form, because I'm going to be following your guidelines. As you submit the forms, we're going to be using that to do the assessment. So, and that's pretty much where I'm focusing my attention, is on what you feel is a priority.
Steve, can you confirm that you got my pictures this morning and the 2 documents for 75 and 77?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. I've actually got them printed out. I've got them sitting actually right here.
See?
So,
right.
So I've got everything organized, and I will be going
Will
out.
you need me to be there at the store when you're coming? Because I have a day job. I only get to the store about 3:30.
I can actually, if you would prefer to be there, I don't mind scheduling something that works for you. You don't need to be. I mean,
I don't think so. It's pretty obvious stuff.
Yeah.
It's exactly as I have described it. You won't miss it.
Yeah, and I've got the pictures to lead me right to the exact spot, so that works for me.
I think, Dave, you had a question. Was that what that hand thing means in the upper left corner you put up?
Yes, that's the old school thing, raising the hand. That's in the reaction block down there, if anybody needs to know Zoom.
That's advanced Zoom.
Yes. It's better than stepping on somebody when they're talking, trying to get in. Technical question on the scope of the work. If, and thinking positively that a project is going to be approved, let's say the scope of the work is $22,000 and we get the grant and we have our 28%. Once we get the grant and we get contractors' quotes, firm numbers, and the project either scope of work doesn't change but is less than the grant, what happens? If the scope of the project ends up being more than the grant money and the amount of money that the owner wanted to put in, can the scope of work be pared back to equal the amount of the grant?
If I'll take this question, the advisory committee has expressed a willingness to be flexible. Obviously, estimates change, prices change. We mentioned the maximum grant amount of $25,000 set by the state. So in the case of, say, if the committee, if a maximum grant of $25,000 has been requested and they're going to match it with $7,000 of their own funding, and the project ends up being more expensive, that additional cost will be the responsibility of the building owner, because we're not allowed to provide any more grant funding. If a project comes in under budget, most likely we would keep the same ratio of grant funding to match. So if the project came in under budget, it'd still be a 28% match requirement. And the way we tip the programs is we get a bill, or we get presented with eligible expenditures, and then the city issues a reimbursement that reduces it by the amount of the match. So if you spend $100 and there's a 28% match, we will give you a check for $72. And so you've paid the difference as part of your match. That's how we typically do it. We can sometimes make other arrangements depending on the needs of the recipient. The grant amount, it's likely to be the responsibility of the building owner, though the committee may choose to keep some funds in reserve and make adjustments if it works out that way when they make their selections, up to that $25,000 hard cap, or a project underneath below the amount that it comes in would probably just keep the same ratio, because we have to show that match to satisfy the state.
The bigger question is on the upper end, if the final project based on the scope that was submitted is more than what the grant was awarded, is the owner obligated to that original scope of work regardless of the cost?
I would say no. I think, again, we'd be willing to work with a property owner, only given that the issues that are part of the spot blight determination are eligible expenses, but have to be addressed as part of the overall project. We can't give someone a grant and they don't address the spot blight issues identified, because again, that's really the single important federal requirement. So you can do other things that are not really spot blight, that are more aesthetic, as long as you take care of the spot blight issues, so that you can't carve that out, you can't remove that from the project. And certainly if someone's selected for a grant and they really just can't make it work, that they're allowed to withdraw if they want to, and we would then give that grant to someone else next on our list. That sometimes does happen. Things change between now and when it might be time to get underway, and people's situations change, and we want to be receptive to that. So we would probably just go to the next person on the list and allocate the grant to them if someone can't take advantage of it. Other questions? Or Steve, were you still anything with the spotlight determination? Have you fully addressed that?
I believe so, unless someone has questions. I think, it's pretty simple.
And what would your role be under project implementation, just as your normal inspection responsibilities? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, basically it's just going to be, a lot of it's going to depend on the actual project. It would be getting the permits initially, getting the, if there are inspections required, we'll go over that when we issue the permits, and then getting those performed and getting the completion paperwork, which I don't know if, Thomas, you need that as part of the grant thing or not, but we issue pretty much for any permit we issue an occupancy permit for that scope of work, which says it was done to meet the building code and the codes. And
we'd probably want to put it in the project file to have a complete file. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Diane, Tina, Dave, do you have further questions?
I do have a question.
All right. Hey, you're there. Hi.
I apologize for no video. I live with children. So there's a tornado going on in my house. So we had already submitted for the previous, and some of the work that needs to be done absolutely can't wait until July, June or July. So should we do what we have to do now and resubmit for the other stuff that can wait?
That would be my recommendation. There's really no feasible way to get you selected and get your project underway to qualify under the federal grant, the federal requirements under that timetable. So if you're 100% sure that that's what's going to happen, then probably it makes sense to remove that from your scope and have a project that allows for that timetable, because that is unfortunately reality. We really we can't really, we're powerless to change that timetable.
Right. So I think that the application that we previously had would be disqualified because part of it would be done prior. And so, and you're saying it can't backdate, you can't get a refund.
Right. That's common with federal grants. It's just, yeah, they don't, because, yeah.
I think for our situation, I'm just going to have to come redo it before you submit it. That's all.
Yeah.
Everything else, I didn't know all of that, and I'm glad John asked, because I didn't know all of that. Diane just filled me in on more than I ever knew. But I didn't know all that, and now I've heard it all, and I think I'll just accept your applications due on April 5th.
Yes, that's what we're asking people.
Okay.
Then that's purely so I have a chance to take advantage, use that information in our application to the state, which is due 4 days after that. So we have some information to build upon.
Right. So for us, is there any way I can request a fresh application and I'll print it out and bring a new one in?
Yeah, I'll be happy to email it to you tonight.
Awesome.
Do you need it? Do you need a hard copy, or you're fine with Word and PDF?
Oh, either one. I'll just print it out.
Okay.
And then I'm happy to meet if you need to redesignate us as slum and blight, or not meet, whatever you want us to do for that project.
Yeah,
I have given Steve your spotlight form from last year.
Okay.
Tina, or let me get, would the spotlight issues be resolved under the project you're doing by June, or would you still have spotlight issues that would be resolved with your new project? Because again, we need to have.
They would only, right. They would only be partially resolved. There would still be some amount of work that can be done.
Okay.
If you could just
Probably
send
worth
me,
submitting, since the more you have, the better the state's going to give you money, right?
yeah, and actually, if you want to just submit, when you get that form, if you could just do the spotlight section, that one page, and email that off to me. And I'll
Okay,
get that updated and get it over to Thomas.
perfect. Okay, that's what I'll do then.
And if I could just add, what Thomas submits to the state in terms of what the projects are is not binding. It just helps make the case for it. So it certainly can change. And this last round, there were certainly projects that changed.
Like we could leave it as is and then edit it if it did go through.
I mean, if you know you're gonna do stuff, yeah, take it out. But if it came down to like, oh, at the last minute you realized you needed to do something and it was already in, it's not gonna mess up the whole process.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to be flexible, and again, there's a lot of time that'll pass between now and when projects get underway. You know, at best we're probably looking at 6 months, and obviously things can change. And again, I think it's the aim of the committee and city staff to have projects that make sense for the building owners and the businesses that operate there, and we don't want to be overly strict, provided it meets. You know, from my perspective, I want to make sure the city meets all the requirements so that we're not liable, because we want to get that what's called a certificate of completion, final certificate of completion from the state, that ensures the state is off the hook, the city's off the hook, and that we've met all of their requirements. So you only the building owners and the businesses know better what really makes sense for you and what is going to be the best project for you given your available resources. We want to work with you on that to come up with the best project for you. So, well, Does anyone else have any further? I mean, Dan, do you have any questions? I mean, you're here. Dan is one of our consultants implementing our last year's facade grant program. I don't know if you have any specific questions or anything you'd like to add. Perhaps you'll be here when we get our new grant as well, doing those projects. We'll see. Do you have anything you'd like to add or suggest?
No, I don't, Thomas, but I think you folks have done an excellent job in covering the program and the responsibility of the city and then what the responsibility of the property owner is. I guess the only thing I would add is that and sometimes I would run into this where property owners would say, oh, I don't want my property to be blighted. You know, they sometimes think that that's a bad thing. But in this particular instance, to be designated a spot blight building is not necessarily a bad thing. And so I just encourage the property owners, if they're thinking about applying for some funding, to go ahead and do it. And I think that's the only comment that I had. As you have pointed out in the past, it is a federal program. There are strings attached, unfortunately, but it's an excellent way for building owners to leverage money. And you know, it's an excellent program, and I'm glad the City of Belfast is participating in it.
Well said. And obviously, Diane, Tina, Dave, you have my contact information. Please pick up the phone or email. We want to help you. We realize there's not much time between now and April 5th, so whatever we can do to assist. Ned has been recording this workshop, and this will be on the City of Belfast website at www.cityofbelfast.org/facade, FACADE, for other people to review. It's where we also have the applications and some other additional information about this opportunity. So I want to thank everyone for staying a little bit late, the city staff staying a little bit late to do this tonight. And we appreciate the interest from our Belfast building owners, and we hope this will be a success. And I'll leave it at that, and thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.